Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel, or if it's your first time here, welcome especially. I'm Sally. I'm so glad you're here, especially for this topic because it's something I am super passionate about and believe every woman should be aware of so that they can make a truly informed decision about their own body. So here we are. This is part 2 in my series of the fertility awareness method. If you have no idea why I'm even talking about this, I encourage you to check out last week's video on why I don't use birth control. Today I'm going to be giving kind of a cursory introduction to fertility awareness method. If you're interested in a more in-depth look at any one element of it, let me know in the comments, like this video, and based on the response I get to this video, I can go there. Also, if you would like to start practicing the fertility awareness method, I highly encourage you to check out the book, Taking Charge of Your Fertility by Toni Weschler. I will pop an image of it up somewhere here. A friend's borrowing the book, so I can't hold up the real copy, but it's what taught me how to practice the fertility awareness method. It is also very beneficial to anyone who is looking to get pregnant but not quite sure where to start, especially if it didn't happen quite as easily as you imagined it would. So before we dive into this, I have 2 disclaimers. Number 1, I am not a healthcare professional, but I am someone who has practiced this for over a year with much success. And number 2, I guess this is a little bit less of a disclaimer and a little more of just, we need to get this out of the way. This is not to be conflated with the rhythm method. And not even with natural family planning. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That tends to be what the Catholic community would call fertility awareness method, but specifically excluding the use of any sort of barrier method, and the technicalities of what it looks like, I think can vary. So this is its own thing. Fertility awareness method, its effectiveness, contrary to popular belief, is as effective, if not more, than most forms of hormonal birth control. Just as with most forms of birth control, it is dependent upon how it is used. If you are not practicing this consistently and accurately, you're not going to see the results you're looking for. But in the same way, if you're on the pill and you're not taking that pill consistently, you're not going to have as much protection as you otherwise would. What I love about this method is that it puts control in my hands. I am not left guessing. I know exactly where I'm at in my cycle. I know exactly when I'm able to get pregnant, when I am not, and on the days where there's any uncertainty, I'm aware, okay, if we're going to do anything, we need to make sure we have another form of protection in place. And that's what's so beautiful about the fertility awareness method. Not just when it comes to contraception, but when it comes to your health as a whole, you are empowered to take that in your hands, to know what is going on, and to then even be able to provide that information to someone who is helping you with your health, equipping them to better serve you. So let's jump into how this works. Contrary to popular belief, a woman can only get pregnant for about 6 to 7 days out of the month. There are 4 phases in the woman's cycle. You've got your menstrual phase, that is, as most people know, during the time of your period. You've got your follicular phase, which is where the body is preparing to release an egg. It's growing that follicle, preparing to ovulate. And then you have your ovulatory phase, which is also known as your fertile window. That tends to be the 6 to 7, sometimes even less, but we give it a little bit more buffer, obviously, just to be safe. But that's the period of time where you could get pregnant because the conditions in your body are hospitable to keeping sperm alive until the egg is released, or the egg is released and it's right there and ready to go. And then after that, you've got your luteal phase, which is essentially where your body is figuring out whether or not you're pregnant and then preparing for menstruation, assuming you are not. So those are the 4 phases. We established that a woman can only get pregnant during that ovulatory phase, during that fertile window. Now the question becomes, if there are only about 6 to 7 days that I can get pregnant, how do I figure out when those days are so that I can prevent pregnancy? Well, our bodies are really cool, and they actually provide a number of signs that give us indication into whether or not we are in that window or where specifically we are in our cycles. Now again, I can go into more depth in terms of what tracking these signs looks like specifically. Also, that book that I mentioned, Taking Charge of Your Fertility, does a fantastic job explaining everything in depth. But let's just take kind of a surface level dive onto what the most common signs are for tracking and what that looks like kind of all compiled together. I do want to say before I dive into this is obviously a very personal topic, so I'm just going to ask that you be mindful of that. You leave a comment just in how you're taking this video. I'm so excited to be sharing this information because, like I said, I think it's super important to share, but also, like I said, it's just really personal, so please bear that in mind. Moving back to the signs of fertility. So there are 3 signs that most people are going to go to determine where they are in their cycle. You have got your basal body temperature, you've got your cervical fluid, and then you have your cervical position. Cervical position tends to be considered kind of a tertiary sign. You can track it to help give you an idea of how the other 2 signs are working together, but oftentimes it's really going to be that basal body temperature and it's going to be the cervical fluid that are your biggest indicators into where you are in your cycle. So let's start with basal body temperature. Obviously, if you're going to know what this is, you have to track it. There are a number of ways you can do this. The most basic way you can do this is just with a good basal body thermometer. You want to look for one that's going to give you at least 2 points after that decimal point in order to have all the information you need right there at your fingertips. And the idea is that you're going to take your body temperature at the same time every single morning before you've gotten out of bed. Ideally, you are literally picking that thermometer up off the bedside table, putting it in your mouth for about 5 minutes, recording that temperature, and then you're able to track. But there are also tools like one I use called the Temp Drop where you can wear it overnight. It's amazing because it means I don't have to wake up at the same time every day. I have a crazy early work schedule, so regular tracking wouldn't work for me, and when I travel, time zones can be difficult to navigate. I love the Temp Drop because I can just put it on. Actually, it's right here. I'll grab it. I have kind of a off-market band on it because I replaced mine, but I'll pull it out. It's a thermometer. You wear it right here while you're sleeping, keeps track of your temperature, and then you sync it with an app in the morning and you know exactly what your temperature was. So the thing about our temperatures is that women will actually see a slight increase in basal body temperature following ovulation. So you can use that shift, assuming you can accurately establish that it has occurred, to say that your body has already released an egg, and then after you have passed a certain window, because that egg has already been released, it can only survive about 24 hours, you can no longer get pregnant for that cycle. So that's how basal body temperature works. You do need to account for, and again, I can go into this in more depth if you're interested, for things like if you have a fever, if you had alcohol the night before, anything out of the ordinary that could affect your temperature. It's good to account for those things to make sure you're not wrongly considering outliers, but especially with the Temp Drop, it's incredibly easy to do this and to then interpret the information. Obviously though, if you're just using your basal body temperature, you're not going to be able to really identify that fertile window. You're going to be able to say, okay, I have ovulated, so I should be good now, but for the remainder, or rather for the first part of your cycle, you're not really going to have indication into where you're at. So that's where sign number 2, your cervical mucus, comes in, or your cervical fluid. I will just say, if you're not on birth control, because birth control can kind of mess it up, think to yourself, have you ever noticed a time of the month where things feel a little bit more fluid? We'll just say down there. You'll notice differences kind of in your underwear, when you use the bathroom, in terms of how things are moving around, what's going on. So those are differences in your cervical mucus. Now, at different times in our cycle, that cervical fluid is going to look different. Specifically, what it is doing when it is at its greatest quantity, and what it is at, or when it is at what we like to call the egg white consistency. So almost imagine it's really stretchy, it's really sticky, it's very watery at the same time. that is creating a hospitable environment for sperm to be able to survive in time, with enough time to reach the egg. And so when you kind of pair everything together, there's about a 5-day window that sperm could survive. And then you have your 24 hours after ovulation that egg is going to survive. So it tends to be for about 5 days. Our bodies are so crazy smart. It tends to be for about 5 days before ovulation that our bodies are producing a noticeable amount of this cervical fluid. However, it doesn't tend to come on all at once. It looks different for every person, but if you begin to track what this looks like at different parts in your cycle or different points in your cycle, you'll notice that often it starts out a little bit sticky, a little bit less noticeable, like, okay, there's something there. Sometimes it turns into what people call a little bit more creamy, and then you have that egg white cervical fluid, which is your most fertile, and a good indication that ovulation is about to happen or happening right around that time. So clearly, when that is present, you are not going to want to have sex that is unprotected because you could get pregnant. So the idea when you put these signs together, do not take this as a prescription. Like I said, you have to do your own research. This is just hopefully an introduction that can help get you understanding how this actually works and that it's not so scary. But when you put this together, generally what you do is assume if you're on your period for your first 5 days, as long as there is blood present, you're good. You're not at risk of getting pregnant. Any day of blood beyond 5 days, you really can't bank on, because usually that's when you might start to see some cervical fluid present, and your blood can mask the appearance of that. But assuming your period ends around day 5, you are good for every dry day you have. So any day where cervical fluid is not present. And then after you start to see that cervical fluid, if you're going to have sex, you're going to want to use some sort of barrier method up until that cervical fluid goes away. So you're going to want to look for 3 consecutive dry days, and you've seen your body temperature increase, and you can verify that increase for at least 3 days. And it's not just any increase, you want to say it's by like 3 decimal points pretty consistently. This can look different for different people, but really when you're starting to do this, the point is that you're able to recognize the pattern for your own body, and then you're able to apply that from month to month. But what's really beautiful about the fertility awareness method, as opposed to something like the rhythm method, is you're never left to assume or wonder where you're at in your cycle. Rather, you use these signs to know exactly where you are, so with confidence you can proceed accordingly. The last sign, that tertiary sign that I mentioned before, is going to be your cervical position. So at different times of the month, your cervix is going to be at different kind of positions in your body. So during ovulation and around ovulation, it's going to be up super high, close to kind of the wall of your uterus, and it's going to be pretty open in order to let stuff out, let stuff in. That's the idea. And then closer to your period, usually that's when it's going to be at the lowest point in your body, and when after ovulation has already occurred, it's going to get closed much tighter, so nothing can come in. And that's, I guess the introductory answer to what cervical position is. You can go in a lot more depth. Often it's something that I will use just if I'm a little bit confused about my temperatures, or if I'm a little bit confused about my cervical fluid. It's just helpful to kind of confirm with that third sign. But really, that's the introduction. Those are the 3 components of fertility awareness method, and this is a tool that has been incredibly helpful to me, and I hope it'll be incredibly helpful to you too. Again, if you want to learn more about one element or another, let me know in the comments. I know I've said that so many times. I'm overthinking it at this point, so I'm gonna sign off, but let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns. I would love to hear it. Please don't forget to like this video, hit that subscribe button. Until next time, bye y'all.